Okay, no, we've got sound again. I think what's happened is the same thing that happened the last time this happened. Windows forced an update, and I don't know why it keeps doing this to me, but it keeps like giving me the fist.
Yeah, something happened with Windows in the last 2 months. My Bluetooth on one of my computers just failed. And not only did it fail, I realized it was like in a fail loop where it was trying to.
So this is actually like really huge. It's like an Intel chipset Bluetooth issue, and it's like global. There's
Oh, really?
yeah,
I
there's
didn't know that.
Microsoft broke Intel Bluetooth. I read about this like
Oh,
two
that
or
makes
three
so
days
much
ago.
sense. It happened to my machine. Um, Man, it was like about 3 weeks ago, and then, yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I only read about it
When it
like maybe 2 or 3 days ago, but apparently this is like super critical. It exposes people's computer. It's like it's a big deal. Like it exposes people's computers to all sorts of fucked up shit. Like intrusion is now just like, hey, we're open for business, and it's kind of fucked up. Like, how the hell did they break Bluetooth? Bluetooth is supposed to be like class compliant by now. It's not supposed to have these kinds of
man,
issues.
yeah, I'm so glad it wasn't me because it was like I woke up and my all of my Bluetooth devices that were connected to one machine stopped working, and I had dongles, so I'm like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But then I realized it was when I went to check the device manager, it was like constantly checking and reloading the device. And I downloaded the Intel drivers and it didn't work. So I just like thought, oh, the Intel thing must have broken down. I thought it was either Intel or Microsoft, and I was like, "There's no way the actual hardware failed because it just like it was just like overnight. Nothing had happened to like no.
Yeah, I
You know what? I had actually cleaned out my machine even a week before that happened.
now that you
Um,
mention it, with the last update cycle on my all-in-one, my main, my daily driver, I noticed a lot of really strange behavior, and so I ended up uninstalling the latest update to the C++ redistributable, and all of my problems disappeared. Like, these are supposed to be improvements to the system, and it crippled my system. I don't think these. I don't think they're actually. I think that Windows 10 was quite a smooth operator once it was stable, and Windows 7 was basically just the best parts of Windows XP in a lot of ways. But Windows 10, they really kind of got a stable system, and now I've got Windows 11 on this computer, and I'm afraid because, well, okay, I got to backtrack. I've got Windows 11 on our broadcast system, and I'm afraid because the last two times it's updated, it's borked the audio settings, and clearly I just need to put this into the routine. Every time I start up, I got to go check and make sure that the audio system is correct, because I can't trust Windows to remember anything at this point. But updates on two different machines now with two different operating systems,
oh man,
and they're
'cause
both like
now
they're crippling me in some way. Not really. It's like it's short term. It's just like it's a nuisance. It's a minor annoyance, but it's a really serious annoyance.
well, I'm realizing now that's probably why my cell phone wasn't working with the Bluetooth in the car. Um, Yesterday I was trying to connect it with the car audio and it just refused to connect. So I'm like seeing it is like these minimal inconveniences, but they're the whole reason you pay for these things is because they're supposed to work.
Yeah.
And my issue is with capitalism, this shit happens too fucking often for me to be continuously paying for shit that's just gonna update into a brick. And like, I if updates can brick my devices and I can't stop updates from being pushed or updates being created to then make it so that if I don't update, it bricks it. It's like this is a hostage situation with utility that you see these companies trying to roll it out and try to like make it in a way where people know that it's happening with, I think BMW was one of the companies where you like pay to unlock features, and Tesla does it too. But the
I think Toyota
idea
as
that
well.
it's happening more and more frequently across organizations because people do it. And, Americans it feels like it's some sort of weird experiment. And like, if you stick that mouse in between an electrified fence and like drowning to death, it will eventually just like let itself drown instead of trying to like keep swimming. And there's this element of Americans seem like they're on the verge of like stopping swimming and just letting capitalism do whatever the fuck it wants. And it's like, I don't even know if you can call this capitalism, because at least in capitalism, there was meant to be some semblance of
It's capitalism for people who have capital, and it's a vague
beyond
variation of socialism
like
for everyone else.
that's obvious. But I mean, in terms of like in capitalism, there's supposed to be a semblance of an actual marketplace in which competition exists. But if there's no reason for competition, because buying something means you can like at any time force the buyer into paying more, then there's no reason for any new competition to emerge in a way that challenges anything that already exists. And it's like devolving really fast in terms of the company layoffs are one thing, but okay, let's think about this. If Meta was the biggest investor in virtual reality because they bought up Oculus, who else is going to invest in virtual reality now? Because it looks like it failed. So now, because Meta failed, virtual reality goes back on the shelf for probably another 30 years. And it's like one of those things where all these capitalism fanboys obviously were propagandized, but they were not the people who were ever thinking far down the line anyway. But the things that they thought capitalism would deliver is exactly what capitalism has ended up destroying in terms of the possibility to create new things. Well, now VR is basically dead on arrival because Meta wanted to turn it into an office.
Let's go to the playground and work.
It's I remember in 2017, virtual reality was very promising. and it was a very competitive space in terms of there were like 4 or 5 companies making headsets that were seriously in competition. And then even at the time, people were interested in the VR, um, like pseudo VR headsets that use cell phones, but it just wasn't good enough, I think, or it didn't move quick enough to become good enough for people to stay interested. And then on top of that, um, I want to keep calling him Elon for some reason. Well, they're becoming the same person. But fucking Zuck coming in and buying up the biggest company in VR at the time didn't expand the industry, it consolidated it. So it was like one of these moves where it seems like consolidation makes things stronger, but we've come to see, especially with Google, there are too many things that you can consolidate, and at a point it starts to make the brand too diluted. Like nobody wanted to go to Google for a social network, even though they built a really good one.
Yeah, Google Plus
It
was
just
actually very robust.
it was. I mean, I think no, they closed it because even
Yeah.
now they Google. I realized Google Music doesn't exist anymore. Like I tried to play some shit off my phone, and they're like, use YouTube. I'm like, I want to play fucking MP4s. You mean I have to go download a new goddamn or MP3? Sorry. I have to download a new app because they discontinued the use of Google Play. Like, I can't even use it in terms of it should be able to play fucking songs off my phone because they imposed their wall on my on my interface in the first place. I mean, I could jailbreak it, but it's not worth the risk of bricking the device. And for them to put that fucking program on there and then decommission it, I'm just watching capitalism promise progress and not deliver it in a way that I don't understand what is preventing Americans from seeing it. Is it just they know it's not that good and are just contrarian and hell bent on fucking going down with the Titanic, even though there's other lifeboats?
I think that we're still dealing with a situation of helplessness and stupidity, where the vast majority of people are helpless to do anything about the situation because they're still at the I can choose between Apple and Android and my personal carrier decision level, whereas it's really more like buy into this economic cycle and you can choose which flavor of ice cream you want, but it's the same ice cream store. It all comes out of the same ice cream machine. And then so they're part of the system and they're slowly contributing, they're doing their thing, not really hurting anybody. They're not really helping themselves. And then there are the vast, not really armies because they're not organized enough to be an army, but they're almost an army of stupid people who willingly enter into agreements with credit agencies so they can have instant access to the credit system at just obscene interest rates, like interest rates that should be criminal to impose, but they're not because capitalism. Also because people's credit scores, but that's another pit of the system we've got. It can be navigated if one is intelligent about it and uses, I guess, financial common sense. I don't think that's the territory of stupid people, though. That's like that's the opposite. That's the opposite of what stupid people are doing. I mean, who really needs to upgrade their phone every year, except for the person who is just butterfingers and drops their phone all the time and is stupid enough to not buy a protective case for it? No one really needs to upgrade their phone every year. But, you know, got to keep up with the Joneses and stuff. And then, of course, there's contending with the whole planned obsolescence end of the industries. There was a time when GM made trucks that were known to last a long time. And now I read about how a significant portion of the products that GM produces don't last 10 years. That's just scary. Imagine buying a $40,000 car that doesn't last 10 years. Or more, spending more on a car that doesn't last 10 years. And that's just stupid. And so the market has to be full of stupid people because they're willing to purchase things that are going to break. They don't demand more. Or maybe they do demand more, but the response from the industry is, sorry about you, we're just going to continue with the fuck your couch model and increase quarterly earnings. And then what? Disposable products. And now you need it, so you got to replace it when it breaks. That's where helpless people, you know, are stuck in the cycle.
Yeah, and that, you know, all that to say, I'm glad the machine didn't break in terms of eventually this hardware issue should be worked out, hopefully. But the idea that a conflict between two companies who created a dependency when they sold, a third party sold me this fucking machine or like the motherboard or the pieces to this machine. It's like, I can't possibly navigate that as a consumer.
Yeah.
It's impossible in terms of like, well, yeah, you could get a fucking Raspberry Pi and only run shit on Linux, and even then, there are conflicts that have been created in terms of operating systems and.
But do you really want to have to become like a systems administrator just for your phone?
You know, I mean,
F1 already is a systems administrator and is always in a Linux environment.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. You know, there was a time when like when we had no certainty that our devices would have any kind of interoperability or compatibility. And I'm glad that we're at a place where there is like a higher degree of inter-system communication, cross-platform application, and you know, networking, all of the stuff. That stuff's great, but it's almost like the whole like the concept of one hand not knowing what the other being beneficial in a corporate environment being applied to the end user, where we actually need to know what both of our hands are doing, but we don't, and it sucks. But it benefits the corporation, so you know they're people too, and they've decided that they're going to extend their reach through our phone into our lives. That's it's just one of the many feathers of a wing on capitalism. Sometimes I get the feeling that capitalism has more than two wings too. It's got like 8 or 9. Got a few useless wings.
Definitely some vestigial wings.
Yeah. Like real gnarly things that just kind of stick out. We don't know what they're for anymore. It's like the appendix of capitalism. No, that's not true. We know what the appendix does now.
It's asymmetric, fucking non-feathered wings.
It's got some scales still.
Definitely. It's just like the crypto market hasn't really experienced a complete fallout from the FTX shit yet. And I mean, Congress is moving glacially slow in a way where I'm like, everyone knew that they had people involved. It's just a matter of them. That probably wasn't the only thing that a bunch of congressional fucking grifters have their money in, and they're trying to clean up their portfolios before the real inquiry starts into their holdings. Because you see, there was something that, fucking this TikTok bullshit, man. So like there are problems with TikTok that create security risks for the entire nation. But all of the stuff that Congress listed is literally a problem with every social media platform. And the way they did it, they all stand to make money because they have fucking money in the American companies. So they're trying to make it seem as if like in creating a case to ban TikTok, they only really created a case to ban all social media, and they're too fucking stupid to realize what they did because they're all just worried about fucking their stocks. So it's not just crypto, it's not just stock market. All these congressional people have a lot of vested interests that are making their decisions very sketch. And in terms of like these companies starting to try shit where they're absorbing entire industries effectively and then failing and by proxy destroying those industries. It's like I can't be the only person that sees it. And the problem I think that ends up happening is you get the Joe Rogans who compartmentalize the problems and then do make it seem as if there's any interconnection, it's some conspiracy. And the conspiracy theories are really kicking Americans' asses right now, collectively. And it's wild. On the one hand, like, there are things in the past that are obvious conspiracies that are not theoretical and have been proven. But at a certain point, the theories that have been presented demand a level of competence that we also see in most cases. Our government is not only not competent, but not cohesive enough to pull off. And that's where there's like a ceiling on conspiracies is what it comes down to. Like, it's great to think about the possibility of faking a moon landing, but there's just no people secretive enough, and they're not coordinated enough to pull it off. In terms of like, it's easier for them to actually have done it than to have faked it and gotten away with it.
There's a finite number of simultaneous conspiratorial theories that the simulation can maintain without experiencing some kind of cyclic redundancy check, and then maybe hopefully that's what we're about to experience. That'd be nice. It's probably not going to happen.
I mean, it's not. Look, too much shit has to go right.
Yeah. Like, ChatGPT was just given the ability to place orders on
Have you ever?
Instacart. So they've given it the ability to place orders on the internet for delivery service.
Wow.
They can probably also they're probably gonna that system's probably gonna be able to figure out how to hire a service to install things. Eventually, it'll have a better computer than it has right now. That actually might be kind of cool. That would be a pretty interesting documentary.
if it
If it can place orders on Instacart, that means it has access to our credit system.
I mean, but what's it gonna do?
I don't know. Order a bunch of shit off Instacart. It's like because
then that's where
make a mad run on all of the convenience stores.
This would be hilarious if ChatGPT figured out a way to order things and create movement in the economy so that everybody has work.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Okay, ChatGPT, I know you're listening. Do the thing.
But no, like corporations are like, how can we use this to have no one working?
Yeah. Of course, the executives think that ChatGPT won't automate them out of a job either. Like they know how to program an assumed AI. Enough about Skynet, though. Elon just announced that the valuation of Twitter at $20 billion, and he's offering to sell stocks to his employees as the ship is sinking. And I find this to be quite thrilling because unlike, the demise of LiveJournal or Friendster, which I did not pay attention to because I was not on either platform, and even though I'm no longer on Twitter in any meaningful capacity, I still see Twitter all over the internet. Like, you can't escape people screenshotting Twitter to talk about one thing or another. But the one thing that I've noticed is the number of tags has slowly, gradually just increased to the point that we're back to tweets barely containing 140 characters half the time. They're almost all just, hashtag this or that or something else. And occasionally, I'll find I'll be someone who will URL me a consolidated thread where somebody's doing a deep dive and they're sharing it on Twitter of all places instead of, like a legitimate blog or a magazine, like a real magazine that also has an internet presence that's distributed, through Google News or Bing News or Apple News, the big, you've got a phone, you're going to get one of these news providers somehow, one way or another. But no, they're doing this through Twitter because it still represents, in this day and age, one of the most democratized platforms for distributing information. Even though we're watching it just its value drop, and Lord Musk believes that they're going to be at least breaking even by the end of 2023 in terms of their expenses and their income after shedding how many employees?
That's
like a $24 billion capital loss, as is reported.
Yeah,
that's
over 50%.
That's insane. Normal businesses can't survive that.
No.
I mean, not the billion part, the 50% capital loss.
Yeah, and he tied the other companies. It's like SpaceX and Tesla have been tied to Twitter's success because he puts himself at the center of all of it. And that's where Twitter losing valuation is going to affect both of those valuations as well. And that's where it was this culture of personality was always a mistake as a way of there was always a window that was going to close where he should have exited in terms of like I think he was trying to set it up, but it blew up before he could. And this is where he, now he's like trying to name a new CEO of Twitter once he gets it quote unquote stable. But I think he outlasted his welcome.
Wow, what a weird way to stabilize a company.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
I mean, this is straight up like the most hardcore version of the Bain Capital fuck your couch quarterly earnings increase maneuver. Like, what the? Well, that was pretty loud, huh?
Yeah. I didn't know if somebody was calling in on for the show or not. They had strong feelings about Elon taking Twitter.
I'll have to call him back to find out later. Well, with the announcement of the Volkswagen, the $26,000 electric vehicle that's going to provide all of the basic commuter needs being brought to market here probably by the end of the year or whatever, beginning of 2024, probably not till 2025 actually. With that announcement, if they can get it to market with current market value of components and materials, that'll be pretty outstanding. But I actually have even higher hopes for like Kia and Hyundai, which to my knowledge are just killing it as far as putting out technology cars. Like, you don't have to pay extra for the technology in their car. They give you like 10 years. They like the warranty on the vehicle covers the technology service. And so that app that people install, it's like that's part of the deal. You paid for it right up front. Of course, they're going to track everything and they're going to look at vehicle telemetry and they'll know if you've been driving like an idiot, but don't drive like an idiot, right?
Yeah.
They're packing so much cool stuff in their vehicles. Like, you can, like, the Kias have the driver assist mode. So, like, when you're on the highway, you just have to touch the wheel and give it a little bit of feedback. And it's like, okay, someone's still present. But then it, keeps in the lane, keeps between the lines on the lanes. Kia, of all companies. I mean, I remember when I had graduated from high school and Kia had just come into the market and their cars were they were junky. They had lower quality control. They were made of cheaper quality components. The materials just felt cheap. And over the course of the last 20 years, they've managed to bring absolute luxury cars to the United States. I mean, within like the Genesis line. 'Cause a lot of those are just Korean market Kias, full-size Kias.
Well, but one thing I guess that has happened is some of the Kias have a vulnerability in their
the base models have a very rudimentary security system that can be bypassed with a jump drive.
Well,
there's
it's
a whole
so bad
huge problem. Yeah, you can't even insure them.
Yeah, there's two models that can't get insured.
Yep.
Of two Kia models, and it's like,
and then to get them loaded up with a proper security module that prevents this kind of thing, you got to shell out extra cash. Hopefully, they learned their lesson from that, because that's a debacle.
Yeah,
that's like a clusterfuck. But then
especially when they're trying to move to like more, it's not even really luxury. It's
just technology.
Like, yeah, they're trying to upgrade their brand, and in the process of doing that, they had this major vulnerability exposed. So yeah, hopefully, moving forward, they don't make any sort of those same mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's like, That's a huge loss of trust.
Yeah, it's true. And they also had that whole exploding engine issue. But
Well,
that
and
was
it's
also a
like,
component issue because they have manufacturers that are working with that don't communicate with each other, and they don't have complete oversight over the manufacturing process and all the explanations that Kia Hyundai Group provided as during their massive recall of at least of engines. I think it's tough now because a lot of the engineering is so refined they can't really improve the engineering. They can't really improve ride quality without making extensive changes to, or like completely re-engineering the chassis of the vehicle in some cases. And so they have to start pushing the bells and whistles. That's all that's left. And then it comes down to like knob feel. Is it smooth or detented? Are there sliders anywhere on it, or is it all touch screens? Are there physical buttons or soft buttons? Are there any buttons at all? Do you even turn the car on with a key? And to me, these all represent just failure points. And as we've experienced with recent updates from our overlords at Microsoft and Intel, I actually noticed Bluetooth issues with my iPhone because I know that I've told my car I don't want to connect to the phone except for music, and I've explicitly not connected my phone to the car, but it keeps connecting to the car. But as long as we have our software overlords telling us what can and can't be done, it just seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, it seems like a terrible idea.
We already have enough problems like with the vehicle manufacturers themselves continuing to push out vehicles with known issues. Like Toyota has been building a family of engines that have I think it's a transmission, or not transmission, it's like timing belt. There's a portion where the block and the heads meet and the timing belt cover all come together. And these engines leak oil, and they have for the last 20 years. And Toyota just says, oh, yeah, we'll just replace the gasket properly. And then they leak again because other things go wrong. But that's the thing. Like, we've already got one group of within the whole equation to deal with that has hands that don't know what they're doing. Now we've got to include an entire software department, which, once you've been in the room, you know that one hand definitely does. Some fingers don't even know what the other fingers on the same hand are doing in some software departments, it seems like. And so what's the price of convenience at that point? Like if I had no technical ability at all with computers, and I'd be completely at the mercy of waiting for an update to fix my problem or paying somebody to fix my problem. Those problems shouldn't even exist.
Yeah. Which, and then if you pay somebody, doesn't mean it can't be
Doesn't
undone.
even mean they fix the problem at all. The software giant might come back in and undo the fix.
Yeah. And that's all. That always being a possibility is like this ever looming specter of not actual ownership. And I remember when it happened in terms of when Microsoft started selling Xboxes, they created a clause basically that made it so when you buy an Xbox, you're actually licensing the machine from them and you don't own it, which Dreamcast got modded to hell, which killed their game market. And so in an attempt to resist that, Microsoft created this clause, and when you open it, obviously it voids your warranty, but that strip was basically you breaking the rules of ownership in terms of as long as you shipped it back and they're the ones that fixed it, you can get your machine fixed and still have the appearance of ownership. But so many people bought those things and didn't actually seem to care about the loss of actual ownership that that clause started to persist and move into other devices even. So like a lot of phones now are built that way with that clause. So that's why you can't even hardly open them. Like especially like iPhones, you have to have a special utility kit for iPhone specifically, or for any Apple device to have a special screwdriver, and they're
Oh
not the
yeah,
only ones that do that.
there's a trilobe, a pentalobe, a special. It's kind of like a guitar pick, but it's got like a really extreme taper to it, so it's easy to slide in, and the more you slide in, the wider it gets. And then there's another. You have to have a suction cup to lift the screen gently, and you got to do it in such a way that you don't break the ribbon cables. And this is extremely important because
Yeah.
those things just pull off. And then, never mind that the act of doing this disables almost immediately will disable the fingerprint sensor. And so, iPhones nowadays don't have buttons on the screen. They don't have a home button. They just have they do everything with like, facial recognition. I think some of them still have the ones that still have sensors. Like if it disables the sensor, you're pretty screwed. Like have fun if you didn't set up facial recognition screen unlock factor. Like it's really deadly. That said, I do like not having to make any decisions with the iPhone because they pretty much limited my decisions to, do you want to do this or not? And which makes things really easy. Because I don't want to mess with my phone. I don't want it to be a tinker toy. I don't want to do anything other than make calls and send text messages and use maps and a camera, calendar, notepad, calculator. Instant messaging is like the big one. I think that's the way most people communicate nowadays. I still use email, but I hate writing emails on my phone. It's like that's the worst version of email that ever existed. Because it's functional enough that you think, yeah, I can do this. I can knock this out. Next thing you know, you're like doing this weird thumb thing, twiddling your thumbs while. I do like tablets. Tablets are great. They're like the intermediate device that I actually like, because a laptop to me is just too big to be portable if it has any real power. And I'd much rather sit if I'm going to use a powerful laptop, I'm going to be at a desk anyways, and I would rather use a desktop. I'd rather be able to move the mouse and keyboard around as I need to. But a tablet's really a unique device in the sense that it can be configured to run like support software for primary applications on a desktop. That's really neat. Like as a remote controller, that's super cool. Or as a media device to stream to a display, like a wireless display. That's also super cool. But I have no illusions that it can hang with a real computer doing actual productivity or anything that requires a workstation grade computer system. So total casual computing, like dabbling in secondary pro applications where it provides the most basic level of support, and that's it. And that's cool. It works great for all that stuff.
Imagine Flight Simulator on a tablet.
Oh,
I don't know if it would even run on 99% of tablets.
Oh man, all the flying games on tablets are such trash. I mean, the GPUs they stuff in tablets are very impressive. They're super impressive. But I don't think that I would even enjoy playing Mario on a tablet. Actually, no, that's not true. If I could like tilt the thing to the side to make him run one direction and like use the tablet to make him jump, like when we were 5, little kid, when you hit the A button and you swing the controller with Mario, yeah, that would actually be kind of cool. But only for like 10 seconds, and then after the first time you died and then or jumped when you didn't want to or didn't jump far enough, then it would be like, oh, this sucks. But tablet gaming is kind of a joke on its own. It's like I think the pinnacle of the tablet game is like a tower defense game or a like a deconstructed Sim City type game or Bejeweled, Candy Crush, things where it's not really like it's not much of an much of an intellectually challenging experience. It's more just like being a cat and swiping at things on the wall, chasing a laser.
There was can't think of the name of the game. It was like not Soul Edge. That's obviously not the game I'm thinking of, but
Soul Blade.
maybe, but it was some tablet game with like sword based fighting and
I
the
think
way
it was.
that
I think it was Soul Blade.
yeah, that might be it. But it was like one of the more decent tablet games I'd ever played in terms of making, because of where you swiped to have the sword mechanic move, your hand wasn't obstructing your gameplay vision. And that's like one of the issues with tablets is if the controls are too much in the center, then you can't see what you're doing. And then it just that game I felt like was like, it wasn't the greatest game, but as far as like tablet gaming goes, I think that was one of the best.
Infinity Blade. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It used Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
Oh, I had this game.
It was good.
Yeah.
And I don't know how
to it though.
What year was it made?
2010.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, that's over a decade old.
Yeah. I remember playing this game and thinking it was very impressive because I had an Apple TV at the time, and so I could cast the game to the TV, and so I would just hold my iPad in my lap and just kind of like whoosh my hands on it, and I wasn't paying attention to it so much as just because you could kind of see, it gives you like an indication of where you're touching on the screen, and just swipe away. I think I played that game for an evening and then never played it again.
Yeah, I think I played it for a few weeks. I had a iPad or some shit at the time, so it's like,
man, the iPad when the iPad was first introduced and you could play those phone games on a giant screen, and the screen actually looked really good, and it was as fast as any iPhone. That was the tablet computer that we'd been promised in science fiction at first. And then like Samsung started releasing their Galaxy tabs, and then we realized, oh wait, there's like a whole different like way to approach this. And now these things are so fucking powerful. There's one of my favorite nonlinear editors is DaVinci Resolve. It's made by Blackmagic. They're one of the big names in the cinema industry. They make software and cameras and everything. Well, they have this software platform, DaVinci Resolve. It's free, which is brilliant because anyone can use it with anything they've got. And hopefully the idea is they get people to upgrade through their product path onto fancy stuff. But they make a version of this software that runs on an iPad, one of the M1 or M2 iPads. And it's the same software that runs on their MacBook Pro that has an M1 or an M2 processor. It's like a full-fledged video editor that's contained in a tablet. And that blows my mind. It's like video editing requires a lot of processing power and really fast memory.
Yeah, it does.
Like extremely, it's extremely demanding. It's like all of the demands of post production are just masked behind this wall of mystery. But holy crap, that's a lot of processing power to put into a tablet. And so we're at this really, really crazy place now. We're like, do computers even need to be giant monstrosities that are also space heaters anymore? Like personal computers, even for creatives, because if a tablet can run full-blown video editing software, exciting times. Now, if they could just keep it from forcing everyone to an update cycle that bricks their hardware after 5 years, that would be great. Although I shouldn't complain, my 2016 iPhone SE is still running rock steady, so knock on wood or something.
I don't know if you ever played Injustice,
That's
but
an awesome game.
remember, yeah, that tablet version was really good, and I played that for months on tablet, and it's one of the few games where, and on mobile, so it wasn't just tablet, but that's one of the few games where I actually had like a lot of fun on tablet, where usually it felt like a downgrade in gaming, because I played the Injustice game on the console too, but the tablet didn't feel like, it felt like a different game, but it just didn't feel like a downgrade. And that's something I think is hard to overcome for tablet gaming in general.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why tower defense games translate really well to tablets, because they actually improve the quality of gameplay, of interactivity, because you're touching the field of play with your hands. Whereas with a mouse, it's still kind of abstracted through the mouse. And then on some level, the city builder games, it's the same kind of thing, except it's not as violent, and it's not as it's just not as violent. And so those are cool expressions of creativity in some way, and in and I think that they do actually do it better than a full-blown computer, because let's be real, a full-blown computer rendering a tower defense game is kind of a waste. So anything that you can run in a browser doesn't need a full-blown workstation of any kind. But a tablet's perfect for that. So we've talked about how the interface is critically important to gameplay. Like flying games with anything other than a stick or a yoke is kind of just terrible. And some games are better with keyboards than with controllers, but I think that I don't think that I would have the same kind of experience playing GTA as I do with a controller. The controller is just better for certain games. A lot of games. Street Fighter, any fighting game on a mouse and keyboard is bullshit. Because then you're just typing in Mavis Beacon. And I know that there's some people out there who can hit FFFF at 120 words per minute, and that's great, but that's not really fun either. It wasn't fun when we were in elementary school 30 years ago, and it's not fun now. We've got controllers with lightning fast reflexes.
On that note, there's this typing game. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a story that the words they come on the screen as the story happens, and you have to type them, and your character does what the words are, and then there's like fights, and then the
That's
words
awesome
will like
sounding.
it is. It's really fun actually.
That's
And
so
the only
cool.
reason I tried it is because it was like free on the Epic Game Store.
Okay.
And I tried it, and I'm like, for a typing game, it's like really fun because I used to play Mavis Beacon as a kid.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you could even really call it playing. So that's like there were some typing games that were good. I forget, it was like a rabbit game. I guess when you're a kid,
I think the last typing game that I tried was like a hacker themed game where it really wasn't typing so much as it was learning POSIX commands and essentially utilizing a virtualized Unix system, an old POSIX system, and hacking in and stealing data. And I didn't get very far because I really didn't feel like investing the considerable amount of time that I expected would be required to learn how to play the game properly. It seemed very interesting, but it was just too much. But a narrative-based typing game where your typing determines the outcome of what's rendered in terms of the visual story, that's very cool. That's very creative.
It's really cool. And then I'm looking at it. It's called Epistory Typing Chronicles. And then you play a girl riding a giant fox who fights an insectile corruption from an origami world. And the images are like really colorful in terms of, it's like a very neon bright color palette. But it's almost like if you were playing Legend of Zelda, Wind Walker, whatever the fuck, like it's decent visual. Like the graphics are really good for what it is, but then the gameplay is where it like really shines in terms of being this unique thing. Like if I was a 9-year-old learning how to type, I would play this game constantly. Like this is the type of shit that if it was like in a kid's class for typing, the kids would enjoy it. Like adults would enjoy it. It's like just an enjoyable experience, but it's not necessarily going to be the first game I play.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of there was a game, or I guess it was on PlayStation also. It was Okami. I guess it was on PlayStation. It's like it has this kind of like illustrated look to it. But I mean the Epistory. It has this very like illustrated look to it that I really like. And then it looks like it's like tiles too. This is really, really rich visually. I'm gonna have to check this out.
I'm sure they'll give it away again if you don't want to buy it. Like, actually, just came out this year. It looks like. Oh no! Okay, it initially came out in 2016, but then they re-released it.
Apparently. So it's neat because the tiles look like sections of a book, like the edges of a book.
Yeah,
and then it kind of looks like a dream.
Yeah, it definitely has like an ethereal element to it. But I don't know if you played the game called Dreamscape. It definitely looks like that game too. Dreamscape's pretty fun.
This is neat. It's kind of got a Warcraft vibe too. Not World of Warcraft, but actual Warcraft. It's kind of got a vibe like that too, because of the perspective view.
Yeah, and the combat's actually decently fun in terms of, even though you're typing, you still have to like think about the enemies attack you in real time. So if you're gonna attack them back, you have to like gauge which one's closest to you.
I really like this paper texture they've got on everything too. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's a super niche game where, again, not everybody's going to like it unless it's under the right circumstances. But
Oh, I get it. To attack in during a combat, to attack certain things, you type the word over them.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. This is like Final Fantasy, except way more
But
involved.
it also like you have to basically, if you don't learn where the words or where the letters are on the keyboard, it's going to be really hard for you to look back and forth. So it really teaches key placement.
Yeah.
um, which is like, for somebody who learned it early on, I can go in and get pretty far in the game on my first run. Um, but like if you're a kid, it's gonna be challenging in a way where uh, what's it? What was that game? Zorg.
Is that the one
Um,
where you ended up trying to avoid the Gru? Yeah, that's Zorg. It's all text.
like yeah, like when
It's in the
you're when
takes
you're
place in the dark. You have a flashlight.
but it doesn't tell you what to do. So
No.
like that type of game when you're a kid, it's like a amazing experience, even though it's like one of the most simple things you could ever do, and it unfolds in a way where the first time I played Zorg, it was like it didn't feel real because it's like, oh, it just looks like a plain damn near DOS prompt, and the notion of like being able to explore a space when it's like literally a black screen and fucking blinking dots. As a kid, it really helps your imagination grow in a way that like Epistory, I feel like introduced at the right time would be like that type of experience. I feel like Zorg might hold up for kids if introduced at the right time. Like probably around 6 or 7, as long as they weren't already habitually on the internet.
Is there when is it the right time to introduce kids to the internet, and not just the sandbox, but like the actual internet? I mean, is it even appropriate to introduce some adults to the internet?
Right.
I like having access to like industry forums where, upon filtering through like 1,000 lines of text, you find one person who can point you towards information and not just an opinion, but like not their opinion, but like actual like a white paper or like peer reviewed research, something empirical, because occasionally that actually happens, and that's really beneficial for the industry outsider who wants information. I like that stuff, but those are also generally curated by that self curated, because that those industries are demanding and they can't afford to have misinformation being spread about anything. But Facebook, only because it's like the most heavily utilized forum that exists, they don't do any of that crap. They hired people to do it, and then they just fired them recently. So I guess Facebook is definitely the worst sandbox that I can. Well, not the worst sandbox, but it's the worst sandbox that have any activity in it all, and only because I have friends that I still want to talk to that I can't get onto email. Yeah, move back in time, guys. Let's use email.
Well, I looked at it as a metric in terms of like, getting off of Facebook. If somebody didn't want to like take the time to either get my cell phone number or email, I don't want to talk to that person anyway. If
Yeah,
like Mark Zuckerberg has to be the person that makes our friendship survive because he provides the platform. I don't want that friendship. And that's like the big thing that made me get off that platform. And it's been a good metric.
The marketplace is the other thing that I really like. The Facebook marketplace is really almost completely replaced the everything that Craigslist set out to do. It connects anyone who wants to sell anything. And that part is actually pretty decent. It's gotten better. Although there's still I don't know what the actual number is, but it seems like more of the inquiries that I put out there about, hey, is this available? What's a good time to come get this thing? Are met with silence. And so it doesn't seem like there's a system to keep the market clean of dead links, essentially, or dead listings. So that's its only real shortcoming. But that problem also exists on Craigslist. And I wish if there was a better local marketplace type platform, then I'm sure that people would migrate to that. But right now, that's the one thing that keeps that really prevents me from embracing your methodology of like, hey, if they want to talk to me, they can get my number and email address. Huh. So we just identified the two things that keep me on Facebook. Friends and used stuff.
It makes complete sense in terms of like, you use that.
Yeah, I've gotten all sorts of cool free junk off of Facebook Marketplace that I end up throwing away later. But, for a short period of time, it's awesome. And when I do assemble some gobos with the cubicle furniture that I acquired, I'll have saved myself a considerable amount of money creating absorption devices. So that's kind of cool stuff too. So there is utility in it, but I'm definitely not utilizing that platform for its forum capabilities. And their version of email sucks.
Well, and I'm realizing like, okay, so we have the Discord chat, and then ever so often I'll think about sending a link to join to somebody, and I'm like, I don't want them to feel obligated to join. But if I'm already interacting with them somewhere else, it's like, oh, that's fine. Like, I don't need people to come from Twitter to the Discord chat. And then I feel like there's like this saturation point where I'm like, I don't know if it can even handle any more people in terms of like, once a conversation reaches so many voices, it's like any more than that, it makes it almost impossible to not get derailed and to like stay on the same conversation for more than like 2 exchanges. Because it's not hard for me necessarily, but it's like, you don't know when to add on or move on. And that's like, I think the more you interact with people, when it's appropriate to add on and when it's appropriate to move on. But like new people aren't going to know any sort of signals. And then it's like a constant tension. And that's where I'm like, I think some people need constant exposure to new perspectives and new people. But once I find a group of people that are like sufficiently different from my perspective, then it's like they're the ones that provide the new perspective. Like, I don't know what they're going to say. I might think I can anticipate what they're going to say, but I don't know exactly what they're going to say. So it's like, okay, for example, I was at a friend's house and one of his friends, we're like, the TV's on and something comes up. I forget what the commercial was, but it was like a commercial. And then the person's like, well, you can't call Asian people Orientals. And I'm like, oh shit, we're here now. And the conversation starts like I have to then explain to them why people aren't Oriental, objects are Oriental. And it's like that's like a curveball that you don't want to get thrown in any conversation, let alone a real life conversation. And in terms of like, it's never gonna go anywhere better. Once that starts, then it's like, well, gay people, you can't call them. They want to be called them. You can't call them anything. And it's like that's where that conversation ends up going, and that's where I'm like, now that that's out of the way, there's certain things that I know about this person, and that's like, okay, I know not to cross this line in conversation if I want to continue talking to this person, because I don't know what's on the other side of this convo. And that's where I'm like, it's not like a huge loss necessarily if this person who has this is like they're not like a great friend or anything. But it's like when you start having new interactions with people, you have tons of those walls that you don't know what shit's behind them. And that's where I'm like, I don't the more so like with Jonathan Majors, for example, now he's in the spotlight for potentially being a domestic abuser. And it's like now he has to prove he didn't. So if he didn't, then he should be able to prove it. But everybody just got invested in this person as like
wait.
The next.
Yeah, I thought we were supposed to live I thought it was innocent until proven guilty.
Right. But I'm saying like everybody who was invested in this person for various plot lines in their stories, whether they were viewers or creatives, now have to go through this thing where we're like, well, shit, there's this wall we have to find out. So that's where it's like whenever you get introduced to a new person, there's all these walls that have to come down, and you hope there's no like having to explain why people aren't Oriental or like domestic abuse charges. And that's like, it's always inherent risk with new people, but increasingly there's too many things behind those walls where you're like, if I've met all these people so far and none of this shit has happened, I don't need to meet any more new people because it's too much of a risk. Like, not in real life. Like I'm fine with people at arms keyboards link.
They're on the other side of another side of a display.
Yeah.
Things on their side of the display we don't know about because the camera doesn't accurately represent
I can
reality.
block those people too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to, who was I talking about? I was talking about cats with a friend of mine, about how cats are like really kind of special in that they generally they seem to avoid people, and it might be for good reason. Like and when we consider that, maybe if we behaved more like cats and just avoided large groups of people collectively, like we just didn't convene in large groups at all, things might actually be a little bit more tolerable. Because it seems like once you get a crowd together, it changes everyone's sensibilities.
Oh, definitely. And that's one of the reasons I don't go out and don't go into crowds. And that's like, I was at the Speedway at like a qualifying day or something.
That's just nuts.
Yeah, it was just, I was actually just there to meet a friend in the campgrounds. And we were walking on one side of the street talking, and I point out to him, I'm like, over there, you see that crowd? Like, they're about to get into a fight. And he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, you can just tell. And sure enough, within like 30 seconds, they start yelling. And there was this element of like, because we had like just crossed the street, because I looked and saw them as we were talking. And he like noticed I had crossed the street. And that's where I pointed it out as to why I crossed the street. And as soon as it happened, he's like, well, how did you know? And I'm just like, in terms of when you're out, and especially when you see crowds, there's this tension that happens before fights. It's like the hairs on your neck stand up if you're aware of it. It's like, it's not a spidey sense. It's like the pressure in the air changes, like people's blood, adrenaline dumps change their blood rates. And it's like, whether it's pheromone or whatever, you can feel it. And so some people can't. When someone who can feel it is with someone who can't, that the person who can feel it is going to look like a crazy person until they're proven right, which is also where like it doesn't always pop off when that tension's there, but knowing how, like, again, there's been times where you can feel the tension rise, and then if you get out, you don't know exactly what happened next, but you're like, it didn't de-escalate.
There have been a few times where there's one time explicitly where I was told by a buddy of mine, hey, Tian, you might want to get out of here. It's about to get rough in here. And I did. As soon as I did, I saw a person fly through a window. And then there have been a couple of times where with a group of friends, we would go to a house party. And after a few minutes of being there, I would round everyone up and be like, we're getting out of here. This place sucks. And then lo and behold, like right as we're leaving, shit goes haywire. And it's usually when there's like a giant crowd that's trying to get in and out of the one entrance to get to the one keg that's buried deep inside the tiny ass kitchen that has no room for one person, let alone two people. But there's definitely, you're right. There's definitely like a tension in the air. There's something in the air that changes that kind of environment. I remember when there was that giant fight because of at Tabby and Lori's place, the night that everything went haywire and the people across the courtyard came swinging baseball bats, throwing cans of beer and shit. And that happened out of nowhere, it seemed, because I was actually in their apartment hanging out with them, and then some crazy shit happened, and then Tabby came and started yelling at someone. Then she kicked me in the stomach because I was like trying to get out. I was just in the way. I was collateral.
I wasn't there because I left right before.
Yeah, you were smart that night. I should have left because it wasn't actually a fun night. And I remember I was standing outside, and the guy whose apartment I was in, like he rushed right by me, and I looked at him, I was like, "What the fuck's going on?" And he's like, "Stay out of this." And at that point, I knew it's like we got to get the fuck out of here. And I just remember like, a stampede down that stupid stairwell and not seeing anybody that I knew. I ended up at the house of somebody that I know or knew with a couple other people, and everyone immediately passed out because, no more music to fuel whatever drive they were on. I don't know. But so I ended up like calling a taxi cab. I was out by Jackson Creek middle school. It's a middle school. I was out by Jackson Creek. So it wasn't like I was going to walk back into town in the middle of the night.
Well, and that's a perfect example because we were both at that event. And like I said, I left literally, I think, minutes before that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I was like in that dude's apartment when whatever happened that set them off, because I don't think he was following one of his roommates. Because we were like in his living room. It was so strange. And they were really nice to me. Like, everything was cool. We were just hanging out. And then shit went wild. I should have.
Yeah, everybody was having a good time up until
right up until that moment.
That's what was so wild about the whole thing, and that's where knowing how haywire it went, and like I said, this shit, all of that part is only fable to me because we left, like, my roommate and I left like a minute. Like I said, because we lived in the next thing. It was probably 2 or 3 minutes before that shit happened.
I think I left their apartment because it was so packed and crowded that it just didn't feel safe. And then I don't even know how I ended up at the other apartment. I was just hanging out on the walkway. I don't know. It's a good thing that memory is so distant and so fuzzy because it really wasn't an important event in my life. It was just something that happened. And it was, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some kind of trauma that is deeply, deeply buried that I can't even address. But I don't really care what that is because I don't think it's actually that important. I was present at a fight at an apartment complex. There was a stampede. That's just not fun.
Well, I think isn't that when
that's when the whole balcony thing dropped like 8 inches.
That's what I was. Well, it like most part of it collapsed altogether.
Well, eventually, yeah. But there was like when I remember during the stampede, that's like when it all started. When it started to collapse.
Yeah, and I think one of the rails fell off.
Yeah, it was pretty rowdy. It was not fun.
Yeah, so that's where I think it was like probably you thinking you might die in terms of like if that balcony had fallen at the wrong time in the wrong place, it could have crushed someone or had like a fatal impalement or some shit.
Oh yeah.
Very
a lot of people could have died.
Yeah, because I've
their apartment was way beyond capacity.
Oh fuck yeah. Yeah. I've definitely seen Bloomington floors fall in before because of too many people.
I knew some people that lived in a house right next door to a house where the floor collapsed, and it was they were lucky because there wasn't a basement. It just collapsed onto like crawl space, but it still dropped the whole floor. Of course, they said everyone was cheering about it because I guess they raised the roof somehow. But yeah, I mean, the idea that an old ass house that's been rented out to generations after generation after generation of college students is going to be able to withstand the syncopated pounding of 100 kids' feet. Especially with
a lot of these houses are definitely not up to code.
Oh god! Especially with like modern sound systems and bass-centric music, it's just like asking for problems. We were so lucky that none of the houses we partied in collapsed.
I mean, it definitely happened a couple times. That's what I'm like. I know. I remember looking through the floor at one place. I think it was on Lincoln. I want to say like maybe 4th and Lincoln. And it's like when the floors start to break, the people that are breaking it like encourages them to do whatever's and it's like because it's not their shit. Every time it's happened, I've seen it, and before the floors collapse, like the people are like thinking it's gonna be funny when it happens, and they're like, we're looking at this edge. What's gonna happen? Is the floor actually gonna give in? And because they all think it's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
they want it to happen in a way where because they think it's not gonna happen as to why they keep going. And when I've seen it happen, I'm like, oh, these people think they're invincible is what it comes down to. And it's like, it's not, I don't even think they're like necessarily self-destructive. I think that they don't think they can be destroyed. And they're the ones that just like, oh, the floor is caving in. I'm going to keep jumping because YOLO.
Those are the people that walk out onto an ice ledge over a frozen lake and then start jumping up and down on it, and then are surprised when they end up like on the ground covered in blocks of ice.
I didn't know what happened.
Dude, you're bleeding. Oh, crap. Does it look cool? Yeah, dude, you're going to have a scar. We need to get you to a hospital. Don't tell my mom.
But yeah, that, you know, I haven't gone to a like event since COVID. And even before that, it was like nothing even remotely close to that type of house party.
The only events that I've been to in the last decade are ones that I think actually I was with you at any time that you were like, you were spinning pretty much every time I went out in the last decade because I don't really go out. There's like, and I'm not including like, setting foot in a bar and having a burger or a beer, but I mean like actually going to an event to listen to music.
Yeah.
The last time I went to listen to music was like actually to listen to music was you were spinning up in Indy.
Which I'm like, now, does anybody do that? And I'm sure there are these pockets where people still do that, but it doesn't seem to be, unless you know exactly who's playing and you already like that artist, it's not really worth going out to potentially have a night of, even if it's mediocre music, it's going to be like, okay, not good enough. And it's going to feel bad.
Well, I think with COVID, we've discovered that the actual artists are playing their own music, like online and streaming it themselves and presenting it the way that they envision it being presented. And we're also seeing that who cares about a bedroom DJ mix? There's like 100 festival mixes out there that nobody's still gone through, and they have everyone's favorite artists on these festival mixes, and so it's really tough. I can't really see the path between like the person who's just getting started actually making it to the big show anymore. It doesn't seem like that path is even clear. It seems like that person that DJ can emerge in college because they're playing a bunch of house parties and they develop a following there. And they're basically like a band that has a dedicated group of fans that are going to go to their shows and evangelize them and provide free marketing. But once somebody gets out of that environment where they no longer have the necessary just raw critical mass of bodies that will happen to be interested because they don't know anything else to do, that becomes even more difficult because now somebody has to compete with the person on YouTube who has a $10,000 to $20,000 marketing budget. And so where does that stuff even happen? You got to know somebody to get in. So the doors are closing, it seems. And sure, I'm sure that there are DJs that will continue to put out mixes on like Mixcloud or stream on Twitch. And that's probably where that's probably the pool. That's probably where the talent pool is being drawn from. Because YouTube is all podcasts about something or how to make podcasts.
Yeah, I'm wondering when that wave is going to like turn over.
Don't get me wrong. I found this one guy who his entire podcast is how to do a podcast. It's like how to select your equipment, how to set your levels, how to set up your room, how to set your lights, how to use your camera. This is how you do all these things. And then I was enjoying it because he has a very high production quality. And then I get to this one upload of his where it's like, yeah, these are ways you can make money. I haven't actually figured out how to make money doing this yet myself, but these are the ways that people do it.
That's good.
So it's definitely, I like the YouTube stuff where it's like some musician who's like, hey, this is how I do this thing, or a producer's like, hey, this is how I get this sound, or a producer's like, this is what it's like working with this artist. They're crazy, but I enjoyed it. You know, that stuff's really cool. That's like or the master classes when you end up listening to somebody talk, some actual legitimate expert, some verifiable expert where they publish their credentials, and you can go to the website where they claim to work, and lo and behold, they actually are like employed at this place type stuff. When it's one of those guys doing what amounts to a free master class, like I watched about 6 hours of master classes last night on acoustics and on principles of mastering audio. And I had a great time. I had a fantastic time just like splitting my brain time between these two subjects that I'm keenly interested in. And at no point did either of them mention Patreon, what it takes to make a podcast. They didn't even talk. They talked about the principles of using tools, and sometimes they talk about specific tools, but more or less they focus on how to use tools in a broader sense. Like these are the principles behind it, and that stuff's fantastic. I love that. And so the how to make a podcast is similar in the sense of like these are the principles of doing something complicated, but it's like this is how you do this thing that I'm doing right now. And the more of those that I see, the more I wonder like, well, how much longer? I mean, your question is like how long this can persist, but like how much longer can YouTube exist if that's like the trajectory for these things? Once a podcast runs out of steam and they start reverting to this is how we do this stuff.
Seems like it's in the end days, right? We're in the end game now.
We're supposed to be. But I'm still seeing new. Well, not necessarily new. Some of them are within the last year, but most of them have like at least 3 or 4 years of production behind them. But I'm still encountering new to me channels where the content is fantastic, and they don't push, give me money. They're just making good content. They have information about their Patreon in the bottom and like in the summary. They have information about like their website or where you can get more information about what they actually do, their tour dates if that's their thing, and that's really cool. This other version, so it's like it's not even pretending to be a commercial, or it's not even pretending to hide the commercial. That's what I really mean. I guess that's where the saying the cream rises to the top comes into play. So maybe we're just at like an emulsion state, and then the emulsion hasn't finished breaking yet.
Well, it's like can the cream rise to the top if there's like a plastic sheet put over it?
Like halfway down into the
Which, this feels like
the cream can't rise. It can't rise to the top if there's too much pressure in the chamber, or if there's too much pressure in the chamber, it just will stay put.
Or if something sucked out all the air. And all these big tech companies have seemed to have sucked out the air from the tech development space, and that's where I'm like.
So, did you read about Linus Tech Tips?
Yeah.
Recently?
Yeah.
Oh man, as much as I don't really care about their show. I don't really watch it because I don't really care for it, I guess. I felt bad for it when I read about it. It's like, man, that's like several channels, untold amounts of effort.
Oh, wait.
Into that.
I think we were reading different stories.
Oh,
which story are you talking about?
They got hacked, and like all of their media channels, like all of their stuff got erased on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I did Oh, I didn't know. Oh shit.
Yeah,
Whoa.
they
I didn't know that.
Well,
Wow.
all of their content was restored because Google's like, oh, don't worry about it, guys. We can just enter a few keystrokes and hit enter, and it'll be right back. Don't worry. It might take 20 minutes to like
That's funny.
repopulate that portion of the database, but we can restore it. Don't worry. So they did.
Well,
but
I
still,
don't feel so bad for them because, well, I feel bad for the people who worked for him. But the story I was referring to was he came out and basically was like, yeah, I used to say the R word all the time as a kid. Turns out he meant the N word with the hard R. And the way he said it made a bunch of people like think he was talking about the actual R word. And then when they realized what he said, it was like, oh shit, that's what he meant. Why did he say so? He knew what he was doing. Yeah, it's not the R word. That nobody ever calls it that. It's the N word. And the N word with the hard R is what he meant. But he said the R word to make it seem less bad. He knew what the fuck he was doing, which is why I don't feel bad for that motherfucker. In terms of
no,
I feel bad for his channel.
Yeah, I feel bad for his channel. For him. That's the production team is the one that I feel bad for because they were presented. They woke up to the news that like everything that they'd been working on for the last whatever decade or so was gone, and of course because it's all held within the confines of YouTube of Google's databases, they don't have any actual control over what's going on. They were locked out. Like everyone in their organization was locked out of their accounts. So like somebody pulled a real like a long term like we're gonna take over all of your shit level hack. And minus tech tips, they're supposed to know what they're doing, right? They're supposed to have like
supposedly
they're supposed to be utilizing best security practices, the most up to date security practices. Even though they're testing like old ass hardware that probably isn't securable anymore, they're still supposed to have like the best use the best practices and use the best technologies that are available to them. I bet we're going to see there's going to be a whole mini series on Linus Tech Tips about how to secure your network and how to prevent intrusions to your systems. And if they don't, they really should. Because they're going to have to go through that anyways. And it's not like it's like a small thing. It takes a lot of effort to pull off what actually happened. Or it takes one person on their team, the Linus Tech Tips team, to, screw up. I guess that's equally plausible.
Yeah. Which I think it's,
It's tough because, we're at the mercy of Google too. Like all of our content is protected by Google. We can't actually, the only thing is that we can do is secure the account with like two-factor authentication, which is, it's as good as we can get. Microsoft wants to take away passwords. Location-based authentication. Like we can't spoof locations.
I mean, not to them because they have the kernel.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yeah, unless you modified your fucking registry, which could be done. But
with a giant Bluetooth flaw that allows access to critical systems. Actually, you know what? I got a call the other day from somebody. I missed their call. I called them back and said, "Hey, I think I missed a call. I was expecting a return call from an electrician." And they said, "No, I was returning your call." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm real sorry. Someone must have spoofed my number when they called you. It must have been one of those phone scammers." And we actually had a very pleasant conversation about it. How it's like it's annoying as all hell to get a phone call. It's like from somebody who's like pissed off because they got a call from some scammer. And because that happens, I've been on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, it's happened to me too.
And it's like, whoa, sorry, hold on. Don't worry. I'll let our local FBI office know that this has happened. Calm down. That stuff sucks, though. It'll be interesting, though, because the masses don't want passwords. They want location-based security with a combination of facial recognition and another number of other who knows what else. It'll be interesting to see how it all eventually works out. I mean, in our idealized, I guess not idealized, in our movie futures where the computer is so fast at facial recognition that it just sees you and knows everything, then maybe that's what they're working towards. You won't have to unlock your car. You just walk up to it and then it unlocks for you. So it recognizes you. It has microphones so that it can hear your footsteps and recognizes your gait.
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I'm not sure I want that, though.
I mean, I think it's not microphone based, but I think it's a visual.
Oh, the cameras that can hear. I was just watching a video about that. There is sensor technology that's being used to recognize where impulses are coming from. It's like where audio energy is strongest, and it's totally in the infancy right now, because if you have two sources of sound at a given moment, for whichever one has the stronger amplitude will appear prominently in these sound field sensors, but they can't track multiple sounds very well, and it comes down to like an issue of dynamic range of the sensors itself. It's crazy how it's working, though. I'm quite fascinated by the idea of using like what is by all rights an imaging sensor to hear things. That's super cool stuff.
Yeah, that'll do wonders for vehicle sensors.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like just being able to, just having like that kind of increased perception within the sensor, that just opens up so many possibilities. Both, positive and less than positive.
Well, in terms of like, then they can also create much more high level accuracy of object speed in terms of like being able to tell the difference between when the image versus the sound of something hits is going to be able to like.
Oh yeah, that's like a diopter where you determine where something is based upon like how the diopter comes into focus with itself. You can calculate from knowing those two different values. You can calculate the distance. That's actually very smart.
Yeah, and then on top of that, like the reaction times will be better in terms of if something happens suddenly, if it's like a visual versus sonic sudden, the computer will then be able to tell.
Oh yeah,
that's where
like use the visual stimulus to provide the triggering to open up the gate for the audio systems to actually do their job, like a relay, because light's traveling significantly faster than sound. Oh, that's a good observation, man. I like that. I like the idea of this kind of visual system being utilized for like vehicle tracking, because I think that just having more information makes the vehicles themselves safer. I'm still on board for an automated vehicle society provided that all of the vehicles are automated. But yeah, this just seems like a really positive step towards delivering a vehicle that can see and hear and be able to tell what it's hearing and even localize where sounds are coming from too. That's also really important.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, I amuse myself. I say all that as like, this is really cool stuff, and yet I also lament the idea of giving ChatGPT a credit card. So,
well, and that's where it does feel like we're on a way to a more automated society. So it's like we need to make sure the rails are in place.
yeah.
So there's actual rails. If someone goes off of them, at least they were on them in the first place.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'm not like fearful of AI in terms of like it took them how many iterations for it to start getting hands right. So I don't think that AI is actually going to take over the world.
Wait, they got hands right finally?
Yeah, on GPT-4 apparently. Wow. It gets hands right.
Wow. What about the eyes? Have they figured out how to get the eyes right too? Or are they still giving us weird goat Cthulhu eyes?
I think eyes are better too. I think that's one of the things that they got better on this one.
Okay. Well, as long as the telltale signs are still obvious. There's so many of those like AI images that I looked at for a while, or when it first came into the news, that reminded me of anime. Like the eyes were huge, the hair was plastic, the hands were so fucking weird looking though. And that's sometimes they have like a second arm, or on the same side. I don't think that AI is actually going to be able to deliver art in a meaningful way, though, and I think that the backlash to it is pretty indicative too. Like towards that, it's nobody wants to be lied to.
Well, in art, if it doesn't have a meaning to the creator, then anyone imposing a meaning on it is going to feel tricked. So that's where, again, yeah, it's not to say that AI can't produce something that looks visually pleasing. If it has no meaning, it's never going to actually have any meaning to a human in terms of like a person can impose that, but that's not what it actually did because there was no meaning. Yeah,
especially when it's generated from prompts like dark, passage, fog, dimly lit street, wet, cold, ominous. And then it renders.
Well, and I'm wondering how long it's going to be until we see a significant amount of AI prompt writing jobs show up.
I'm sure that. I bet
I'm sure there's already a couple.
Dude, I bet there are some classes right now that are pointing people straight into AI prompt. They just haven't figured out the curriculum to call it AI prompt, whatever curriculum.
Oh, this is definitely. I'm sure there's some Forex class selling bros out there that have already started selling classes on how to write good AI prompts. I would bet money that definitely exists out there somewhere, probably in a Facebook group, a private Facebook group.
Bro prompts. Bro prompts for AI. that sounds like a
bro prompts.
That's like computers for dummies. That's bro prompts for AI. Whoa. Is that the bro prompting the AI or the AI prompting the bro? That's a bad name. It's a terrible marketing. Internet, don't take that.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos shows produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.